right away. But before we do that, let me give you a peek into what we are going to discuss as our very first issue, and that has to do with the question of electricity. Darkness come upon us, doom so. And I need to say that it may not be entirely fair to say that the energy minister is saying that we should just rely on God by prayer and do nothing. Suggesting that when they are pursued and pursued vigorously, we should see the problem over. But certainly not now, and not the deadlines that we had heard before. Let's hear what those who are connected with power have had to say about the current situation.
They're pure, and all the tools should be available and in large quantities. If any one of them is in shortfall, you have power crisis. We don't have enough generators in this country. So even if we have enough fuel for all the generators, the margin of reserve that we have is small. The fuel supply is also a big issue. So until we find ways of fixing these two issues, we will not be able to get over this.
Thank you very much. You're welcome back. Now, the thing you would know by now, certainly, is that practically you are not getting the needed electricity supply in your homes. And again, it appears that recently what is happening is load shedding that is unannounced. So you do not know when you're going off and when you're coming back on. People have had to sleep in darkness for a long time. Some have done 3 days and more, so they complain. So we're looking at all of these matters regarding the power generation system and how that can be resolved in good time, particularly for you lovers of football, so that you can watch Brazil without any hindrance. Once again, you're welcome. There are other issues that we'll be looking at, as I announced earlier. We'll look at the NPP itself as appears to be fighting itself presently, and the calls for a ceasefire within the Nana and Alan Tremantin camps. Also, the EC is coming under threat to audit the voters register before it proceeds with its intended registration exercise. We'll find out how that is going to pan out and seek to see what exactly it is that our MPs are giving 34,000 Ghana cedis each to monitor projects in their constituencies. How legitimate is that? And some are saying, how legitimate is that, particularly in a crisis situation that we find ourselves? Also, the president, John Dramani Mahama, who is chairman of ECOWAS, you are aware, just yesterday, has been speaking to his colleagues, and they have been strategizing how to deal with Boko Haram and other difficulties within the sub-region. And I say a friend and a critic says these are clueless pretenders, just attempting to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. Thank you very much once again. Your comments and your questions are welcome. 1422, that's the text line, or you can send them to 1760. You can post your comments on our Facebook wall as well, or send them to me directly to Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. And we will share them with the rest of the world. My guests are seated, and privileged to have Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr., who is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper and our regular panelist on this show. Good morning, Abdul Malik, and welcome to the show.
Morning.
Dr. Emmanuel Akwete is the executive director of IDEC, and you know IDEC is one of the biggest governance think tank in Ghana. Good morning and welcome to the show. Also, Abraham Amaliba is a lawyer, law lecturer, and with the NDC legal team. He is here this morning after a long absence. Good morning and welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And Mr. Ayikwe Otu, the Honorable former Attorney General and practicing legal practitioner, senior one at that, and he is also with the New Patriotic Party. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Now, we are ready, and we can set the ball rolling. Now, I don't know if all of you have had uninterrupted power in the course of the week, or even this morning or last night, and what your view of the current situation is. But whilst we look at it and criticize the providers of power, you would also be interested to know that we are told that the VRA buys $50 million worth of crude every 18 days. That's interesting, isn't it? I'm read you just a story by Elvis Dako of the Finder newspaper. He said the Volta River Authority, VRA, imports 450,000 barrels of crude oil at a cost of $50 million every 18 days to power thermal plants to make up for the shortfall in natural gas. This generates 207 million units of electricity. Only $25 million will be needed to buy natural gas to generate the same amount of power that the crude generates if natural gas is available. I'm asking myself, where is this money coming from? It sounds so huge. Where is it coming from? And are we getting to a point? And in fact, we are being told that because of the shortfall and the fact that Jubilee is not able to come on with gas, and also the Ghana Gas Company is also not ready yet, even though we are told in July they will start. The West African Gas Pipeline is also not providing the full contract of 123 million standard cubic feet per day as it was required to do. Now, in all of this, are we looking forward to another hike in the prices of electricity? And how are people going to be able to bear that in the current situation? I'd like to start with you, Mr. Ekotu. How do you see the power situation? It appears that the solutions keep eluding us. We get promises over and again, and they remain just promises.
Well, the supply has been erratic, and I do not think it's different from what we hear in Nigeria. The acronym NEPA stands for Never Expect Power Always.
NEPA.
And it seems to me that we are into that same mood, if you like. But one should be able to, if you like, explore other sources of energy. We are talking about gas or thermal, if you like, and only hydro. What about wind, atomic, and the rest? There are also other sources of power generation. And you need power always, there is no way one could, enjoy some evening or work consistently without any disruptions. And like some of us who even have generators, sometimes you have difficulty with getting your oil or petrol and all that. So what about those who don't even have generators at all? The evenings become so hot. Yesterday in some parts they didn't have power at all. In parts of Nungwa that I passed, Cocoa Beach area, there was pitch darkness, and you are giving opportunity for armed robbers and others to operate in the night. So I don't think that it is the best. This will be my initial comments.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have mentioned there are other options that ought to be explored, wind and solar and so on. We have heard this over and again. It doesn't appear as if we have a real strategy at bringing these on board, so that we don't get into the cycle that we keep getting ourselves in as a country. Already we know that this particular situation is plunging a lot of businesses into difficulty. You may not directly, associate what is happening with Newmont. They are laying off 600 or so workers. Anglo Gold is laying off as many as 4,000 or so. We have heard about Tor that is laying off 300, and so on and so forth. Farmec Farmwork Ghana Limited, we understand, is considering laying off 90 workers, Gassem, about 480 workers, and some of them can make a link towards the fact that production has become low because there's no power.
There's no doubt at all. I mean, the energy affects business. It affects even investors. If people want to come and work and they cannot be assured of constant supply of energy, surely they will not want to come. But it places it in a political situation. Now you have a government in power. So if you have had a government in power for some time, you know, why is it that they've not come out with innovative ideas of solving this problem? I know my friend on my right will quickly jump into their defense when his term comes, and his term comes. And some of the things they say is that it's been on for a very long time. That's all. I know that's where it's going to start.
I can speak for myself.
This thing has been going on for a long time. But at least you have been given the authority to run this country for some time. I think our current president had done it for about 2 years. He's done another 2 years. His boss was there. Since 2008, we've handed this government over the running of the government to a country, to a government. So what is this government doing about it? Are there no ideas? Are there no new innovations? Is it sufficient to just say that it started some time ago? I mean, we tried to do something about it. Thermal, what is it? This Sunyani thing, this new hydro thing in Bronga, Bui Dam. It was brought on by the Kufuor administration, realizing the difficulty. You know, other machines were brought into this country to assist. Some refer to them as toys, but at least an attempt was made to try and solve the problem. What is it that we are seeing? This gas thing was signed in our time, when Kufuor was there. And why are we keep on having this problem, and there's not appear to be any, bright ideas or visions so as to resolve the matter? I believe that my friend on my right will speak more on what his government has been doing to resolve the problem. But I would mark them very, very low, because we do not. I mean, in our time, we spoke about the fact that we didn't have sufficient water in the dam, so that was a real problem. But now we are not complaining about that. So why do we have the problems? Is it that we're having to pay too much of judgment debts, said that we cannot harness resources so we can channel them to these areas which are so critical? Is that the issue? He would speak to that.
Thank you very much. We understand that some of the machines have been breaking down or are broken down. Mr. Fletcher, who is with the entities, has brought that to bear. He says that machines have been shut down, and sometimes you need this normal, these shutdowns to be able to do the repairs. And some of the machines that have been shut down normally generated about 500 megawatts, and on all of
the machines,
all of these things down. Maintenance ought to be done. But Abi, there are those who are saying that the NDC as a government, as a party, had a manifesto in which it promised energy for all by 2016. It doesn't appear that that project is on course, because we have had the president sound so confident in assuring that the problem, was over, only to wake up the next day to find that we are back to the problem again.
Samson, this is the 4th time that this country is experiencing such crisis. If my memory serves me right, the first time was in 1997. And so this country should have been wiser by now. But we are where we are because some group of persons, when they took over the reins of this country, did not contribute a kilowatt to the energy mix. Indeed, when the 1997 crisis came and hit us hard in the face, the Rawlings administration at that time put a thermal plant at Takoradi to help resolve that issue. And that took us very far until, again, we were faced with two of such crises under the Kufuor administration. The question to ask is, if they had done something, and he's mentioning Bui was just a foundation. It is the NDC that brought it to where it is. So you can't be talking about Bui as an advantage that you have brought to this country. But you see, there are generally two.
But when you say that they did virtually nothing, they didn't add even a kilowatt, you're not speaking to the fact.
Why?
And again, you admit that Bui was not started by the NDC government.
I'm saying that
came to complete it. And in fact, they have a long list of activities, things that were done practically to add up to the generation mix.
No. Bui was a foundation. You agree or not? It's a fact. Bui, before they left office, Bui never generated a kilowatt. It was a foundation. It was the NDC government that brought Bui to where it is. It's a fact. Any person can grope in the dark and see it. You don't need light to even see it. Yes, you don't need light to see it. It is so clear. Yes. They brought in their attempt to resolve the matter, courtesy Roku Brobe, we realized that what they brought in were toy machines. He has alluded to it. So their attempt to resolve the matter has not been what the people of this country expected. And that's why we are where we are. Now, this country relies basically on two sources of energy mix, hydro and thermal. I say broadly. There's solar, which is not any substantial. 46%, and we have exhausted our hydro needs. 46% come from thermal. But the thermal is expensive for now. You have quoted figures that we need so much money to be able to import crude to fire our turbines. And this also explains the deficit that we are experiencing. And people are not looking at that. These huge amounts, where are they coming from? You ask the question. This is where some of the deficits has gone to. But as a government, we are saying that when we bring on board the gas project component at Atwabo, then it will help resolve the issue. Now, you know the energy minister has indicated by July, this will come on board. And from what you have read, you have told the people of this country how less expensive it will be to fire or generate electricity through gas. And so the question to ask now is, if gas comes on stream, would that resolve our energy crisis? And I dare say that it will drastically reduce the crisis in which we find ourselves. What we need is the reserve margin. And the energy minister has indicated that by 2015, looking at the projects that he's bringing on board, we will be able to achieve that reserve margin. So if we are able to get a reserve margin, then we can say that we are out of the woods. But in the short term and medium term, July, when this gas project is completed, Samson will have a big reprieve, and the people of this country can now say that we are on the verge of seeing the back of Dumso. So I am of the view that some work is going on, and I heard people misquoting the energy minister saying that he says we should pray. He didn't say that. The energy minister said that he is praying, because the question was, what about Akosombo? And he said he's praying that this year there will be more rains. He didn't say you and I should go and pray. He is praying. And so I don't think that it is fair to the energy minister to say that his solution to the energy crisis is asking Ghanaians to go and pray. I think that is mischievous.
Thank you. Abdul Malik, I suppose you had liked to read all the documents that you have assembled this morning to bring to assist the discussion.
Well, fortunately last night, yes, I did. But before then, we've had this disruptive situation, which I believe is not peculiar to my experience.
And do you believe, first of all, do you believe the PURC, when it says that it's going to sanction the utility providers for not informing us or bringing a load shedding or keeping to a timetable, they say they will sanction them? Some people don't believe them. They say they are just, throwing that into our eyes.
The last time I checked, that was not the first time I was hearing that. So there is this record of saying it and not acting upon it. But why not? We should hope that one of these days they will act upon it. And indeed, I've had also some citizens wondering if they couldn't go to the courts or the appropriate forum to seek, redress if PRIC is not doing it for them. So there are areas we haven't, tested, and maybe it's about time. We need some strong consumer, association, that kind of activism, so as to bring some of these institutions of state or service providers into check. Maybe there's something lacking. There's a certain deficit relative to that kind of activism in our society. And
but it's okay that the ECG is apologizing for its inability to do that.
Well, it has a mitigating effect, but there are a lot of people who are very irritated by it because they want service. Right. They want efficient service. We are told to pay more tariffs in order that services could be improved. And so when there appears to be a crescendo relative to that particular thing, and we pay, and yet we don't get a service, it leads to some cynicism. Right. And it's not good for, the management of the process. But my brother, Amalba made a point about, I'm just clearing out the small distortions, or if you like, well, I'm sorry I said distortions, something that I think not very factual. See, I have here the daily graphic of 4th December 2008. That's it. Bui project in second phase. The first phase of the Bui hydroelectric project has been completed 1 month ahead of schedule. Okay, yes, it hadn't generated any power, but if you know how these processes are dealt with, you would know that they go in phases. In fact, it says the tail end that those things that can generate power are installed. If you don't do the preliminary things, you cannot install power.
But what is preliminary? Is it not foundation? When I say foundation, did I actually mean that it's a euphemism? I didn't actually mean that they were digging foundation. It was at the elementary stage. You have just said it.
It involved the resettlement of local residents, the establishment of camps for contractors and employees, the construction of warehouses, workshops, and access routes, as well as installation of machinery.
That's foundation stage. That's the elementary stage. That's
without it, you can't get
good. So that's what I'm saying, that those were the preparatory stages.
You see, the difficulty we have is that there's so much partisan and emotional drives into such an otherwise important subject. And so you took off from the wrong tangent. And I'm establishing the point.
You took me literally, indeed, and I'm saying
that it was to be completed 2012.
You have explained yourself that it was meant to be a euphemism.
Listen,
yes,
it was not.
It is.
It was a deliberate propagandist intervention he was making.
For who?
Okay. You let him finish.
So just hold on.
You know these are preparatory stages.
I'm sure there's a reason you brought this.
Yes, I have brought it.
Don't forget that a huge part, almost 90% of the financial facility also had been secured. So we are talking business here. Right. And don't forget that this project was about 30-40 years late. That's put in, relate all the facts and you get a significance.
Caused by who? The overthrow of Nkrumah. And who are those who overthrew Nkrumah?
That is true to some extent.
But why are you leaving that out?
No, but what did I say? You see, you are asking me to do your partisan politics. I am avoiding it because I think this is a very important subject. Now, but listen, post Nkrumah, how many years?
Correct.
Post Nkrumah, how many years? And how many years did your tradition have the opportunity to rule this country post Nkrumah? You see, don't let's go there, because if you go there, you won't win the debate. I can assure you of that. Again, and it is not true that the first time we had this crisis was 1997. Something. This is Daily Graphic, Friday, November 11th, 1983. Power supply to be cut by 40%. I read, the Electricity Corporation of Ghana has decided to reduce its electricity supply by 40%. The remaining 60% is going to be distributed sparingly and judiciously throughout the country. This was announced by the senior commercial engineer of UCG, Mr. S.Y. Yate, at a press briefing at the corporation's head office in Accra. The reason was, of course, then low level of Akosombo. Friday, October 31st, 1997, sharp drop of water level in Volta Lake. Power supply to be cut by as much as half. Power supply from the Volta Lake is to be cut by half due to the sharp drop of water level in the lake. Mr. M.A.C. Ado, Director of Organizational Services of VRA, told a news conference in Accra yesterday. Mr. Ade made it clear, however, that the VRA is broke because it has had to rely on its reserves to fund these other sources. The people were raising issues of other sources. Same daily graphic. ECG load shedding exercise in Accra, July 11th, 2000. No end in sight. That is the headline. There appears to be no immediate end to the current load shedding, which began last week in the capital, Accra. The problem is even reported to have been extended to other parts of the country, as a reduction in power from the VRE has made it impossible for UGC to meet its the demands of its customers. Went on and on said, according to the source, the VRE cannot even meet the cost of production as a result of huge indebtedness of its customers. It said the financial predicament of the VRE was raised as a boise when the Vice President, Professor J.E.A. Mills, visited the plant as part of his tour of the Western region. Fast forward to 2006 and 7. Same situation. Same situation. Now, Nkrumah inaugurated Akosombo January 22nd, 1966. At that point in time, the capacity Akosombo had, we couldn't use it. Remember the vacuum and all that, we had more than we could. Of course, the population, the level of industrial development, commercial and activity and all those are factored in there. Subsequent to that, we had Pong coming on stream 1981. It was Achampong and Liman that drove that process from the mid-70s. July 1981, Rawlings commissioned it. Then 1998-99 came the Abuazi, that's Tema. That was the first time we were bringing in that process. Then, of course, West Africa Gas Project, which began somewhere in 1995 in terms of the idea and the processes. Ghana had to do its investment. I've forgotten how you put it, our equity share, somewhere in 2002 or 3. If Mr. Aikuti can remind, but my memory is...
We signed the agreement
yes,
in 2005.
no, but the equity, we got money from Nigeria,
yes,
in putting it in there. And then, of course, we are talking of Ghana Gas today. It is not as if we are not making efforts. Let's be honest, throughout our history, here are the basic facts that we've been making attempts. Perhaps they are uncoordinated, they are not systematic, they are not consistent in dealing with the kind of challenges we are facing as a country that is developing at a certain pace. So, what I think is happening is that there's a gap between what the kind of progress we are making as a country, the economics, the scale of development, industrial development, commercial development, and our ability to actually do the requisite investments and execute the projects that we've been put. I'm holding here the energy plans that we've had over the last 20 years. Fantastic. Either lack of investment in terms of directing the appropriate funds to those places, or sometimes sheer ineptitude on the part of those we have put in place to manage those processes. And that is why, indeed, we are suffering a problem that we have suffered over the last 30, 35 years. It's more or less an indictment on our national efforts. That's the way I see it. You see, when you attempt to put these things in context of regime achievements, you get into difficulty. Okay. It's part and parcel of the reason why we are unable to resolve the matters. Okay. Okay. If you, because there's a lot more to say,
know.
So
I know.
I can come back.
Hold it on there briefly for me. I'll go to Dr. Akwete here. Now, Koku is responding, largely to the politics, fair and unfair of the problem, but the critical question is that the Ghanaian is not interested in the history. All they are interested in is that we need power now. We need it to be able to function. We need it to be able to keep our people in their jobs. We need it to be able to feed and to do almost everything that we have to do. And, you know, Abraham was talking about not adding just one, and I told him, you know, straight away that that was inaccurate, because I knew that Kweku would have that history to take us through. And in the very recent history, the project. Exactly, the NPP will point you to the Bui, what they did about it, like Kweku has done. They'll point you to the VRA plant funded by government, 110 megawatts. They have the mines reserve, also funded, you know, supported by government, that's 50 megawatts. You have the energy emergency plant. You have the thermal private investor with government support. You have a 200 megawatts. You have a total of 560 megawatts. Normally, you'd hear the NPP say that's about the total, or 876 that the NPP was able to bring to bear on the project. But the critical question is that that is still not sufficient.
Well, you know, I think I've listened to the three gentlemen, and I like the point he said. It's good to look at the politics, to look at the history. The heart of the matter is that if you were to draw a scorecard, neither the NPP or the NDC has successfully provided the country with sustainable energy, ended the problem. So they all tried, yes, there were various initiatives and so on, but the crises keep recurring. In fact, I'm looking at the topics and the point sheet you have. It's referred to as crisis. And so the question is, you can manage crisis for over 16 years. I mean, if you're looking at it from 1998. And the recurrence of the crisis probably tells us that either the analysis, the diagnosis, the approaches we are taking to solve the problem are inadequate or not thorough. You see, when you have recurring crisis, it tells you that there's something structurally amiss, or the fault line. You have to go to the fault line. And usually you would then begin to say, where is exactly the problem coming? I'm hearing about new initiatives, but when you talk to people in the VRA, they'll tell you that the infrastructure that exists, that we are all drawing on, is extremely old. And because the demand has grown, we couldn't control that or manage that. And we are supplying power, chasing a sprawling development. Almost all the institutions that would see to planning, spatial development and all that are ineffective and can't stop anything. The sizes of houses we build or how we position it, all these energy management efficiencies and so on. So there are so many factors involved here. And yet every time we're quick to say gas, thermal, oil, hydro, and so on. But the infrastructure does not exist. The infrastructure on which most of us depend is decadent. They need to be reformed. They need to be rebuilt. And there is I have not heard about any single plan. That's it. So the first thing that strikes you is that, yes, the crisis management has helped us come this far, but it's truly crisis management.
When you say you haven't heard of a single plan, is it the case that you may not have paid attention to this particular sector, or that there really isn't a plan? Because I started by referring to the Energy for All, you know, policy by the NDC for 2016. That suggests to me, sounds to me, that there is some plan that by 2016 there will be energy for all, sufficient enough.
The generation problem is what we are facing, and I'm to ask, if I were to ask, Energy for All from 2016, when was it announced? And if it was announced under the current tenure or in the manifesto and so on.
It's in the manifesto.
You ask yourself, could you do this in 4 years? Is it realistic, given the outlay, the demand, and the fact that we are not just responding to domestic demand, industrial demand, social demands, and we need it even in abundance to bring in investors and so on. Where is the plan that said this can be delivered
4
in
years
4
may
years?
be too long, because I've heard this energy policy aspect, Dr. Mohamed Adam, saying that we need to declare 3 years of a crisis and pay attention, focus, and resolve the problem. So if it can be resolved within 3 years, then 4 years should be sufficient to do that.
But where is the proof? Okay, we've been tackling this from 1998, and I think each government took it seriously because it was a near national crisis.
Right.
It was affecting the economic policies, economic growth, and all that. So the crisis approach, 3 years short term. What we need is probably a much more long-term strategic plan where we begin to see how a very coordinated approach, and I think Kweku raised the issue that yes, many interventions are being made. Probably they are not coordinated the way they should to provide the basis for sustained supply, not only in terms of, we can't afford very expensive, we brought in very expensive technology, the thermal plants, what it costs to run it and so on. But we have to look at the whole picture and say, what kind of energy generation, diversified, supply responding to the different demands, how do we control, how do we manage? Yeah. We can't do that without also looking at how development is taking place, human settlements and so on, how they spread and so on and so forth. We only look at the supply, the equipment, the gas. We were expecting this and suddenly we were disappointed. Nigeria didn't give us. So it all tells you it's the crisis management. So the diversified area, I mean, at what point could we start the solar and say, in the long term over a certain period, there are certain areas that will depend on solar. And this is going to be constructed over 3, 5, 10 years. But it's going on systematically. At what time are those who would benefit from wind and so on? That kind of plan is what I'm talking about. But also that which revamps the old infrastructure, which there's a huge dependence on that. So where is the plan? And I think it's not that we're incapable of producing the plan, but I think sometimes the choices we made are too expensive to sustain. We've not been given hope to say, look, this realistically cannot be solved in 3 years, but the two parties would agree on that and say, this is a national problem. We need to prioritize it differently. We need to go through it systematically, phase by phase. In the interim, these are the things that will bring along. But the present question is, can we solve our energy problem simply by depending on experts and the policymakers? Shouldn't we also engage the communities, the citizens, the corporates, in a way that says that probably they might have ideas on other ways of controlling and managing their energy needs? And those kinds of interventions that will provide them with a long-lasting supply and so on. And I think I do not have a feeling that we've really agreed on the national strategic plan. Right. Okay, and devoid of the politics of you did foundation and I did this. It's a national problem. But maybe we should quickly resolve that and leave it to the technocrats and leave it to investors and leave it to communities to see how best energy can be managed. I mean, you have to manage it, just as we're told, switch off this, switch off that, and so on in your home to be able to sustain that. We need it in a larger scale and also more efficient alternatives. And we don't hear that. And that's why I'm saying that if it's crisis, you have to look at it in terms of reconstructing, redesign, going to the fundamentals.
Let me find out briefly if Abraham Amaliba has an idea what the details of the plan or the strategy is as far as the Energy for All program by the NDC is concerned, or it's just one of those things that we are familiar with in Ghana. You make a political promise and that's the end of it. You win power and you just forget it, you go to sleep. Before you do that, there are people who want to remind you of something. Kofi Owusu says, Samson, ask Amaliba if he is the one who ensured the following were done. A, energy projects undertaken by the NPP. And he says, 1, Bui Hydroelectric Dam, Bui 400 megawatts. 2, Abuaze Thermal Plant, T3. Takrady, that is 136 megawatts. Osono Thermal Plant, Tema, 120 megawatts. Pong Thermal Plant, 220 megawatts. Total, 876 megawatts. You have another Samuel Brian, also referring to a number of things that were done and giving you a total of 876, okay, all of them, quite a number of them, telling you about some 876 megawatts that were added to the whole energy mix. Nathan Ataedu says, please remind Amaliba that President Mahama told us Dumso was over when he inaugurated Bui for his argument concerning the history of power generation in this country. Then you say the better, you end it there. Felix Ousuanani says, Samson, I think lack of ideas as to how to solve the energy crisis is costing us as a country. Our people in charge are incompetent and untruthful. Tariffs were increased on the basis of improvement, right? I guess I referred to that in the power sector. Where is that huge monies that were collected by the ECG every month? Ghana should grow as a country and stop this cyclical energy crisis. Bonti Benjamin also gives you a sort of a lowdown of what has been contributed to the energy mix, and a lot of people seem to have some very good memory about what has gone on. And you see, this debate, we have had it here over and again, and the list has been told us time without number. The question I wanted to address specifically, respectfully, is this. Dr. Akwete is talking about strategy, strategic plan, long term. I guess all the other guests and yourself have sought to refer to that. Do you have an idea what the NDC's policy has in the details?
Samson, I want to emphasize here now and then that when the MPP were leaving power, we had not produced 1 kilowatt. And I want anybody to contest me on that. Now to your substantive question. This plan that you are talking about is there. Indeed, you know the plan has to do with the
in fact, it's a manifesto
Yes.
a promise.
Yes.
We don't know if it's been, reduced into a plan properly so-called.
In fact, the manifesto itself would give birth to what is being implemented now. And what is being implemented now is, there's this invitation to the private sector to partner government in trying to provide, and that's how Sogole came on board. That's how, but you see, the tariffs.
No, but these are projects that came before this plan. So,
and I'm saying that the plan, I'm not saying that the NDC plan gave birth, but I'm giving an example of such a plan.
Okay.
An example of such a plan. So, but the tariffs that we are taking now are so discouraging that the private sector is dragging its feet to come on board. If we go full haul by implementing the full recovery, then I think that will encourage the private sector to come on board.
Can we go full haul?
It's a chicken and egg situation. You need to look at the circumstances and look at the capabilities of the people to be able to.
Do you remember what we were told when we were asked to pay more recently?
Remind, what were we told?
Yes, we were told that it is to allow for efficient power delivery.
Oh, indeed. That one, we didn't actually get the full recovery as presented by the service providers. Government also had to put a human face to it. So it was not that full recovery properly so-called. Now, the other issue is that there are plans to dump, water bodies in various parts of the country. So when you go to the Upper East, you may have a dump there, the White Volta or the Black Volta along the Gonja areas. These are some of the plans. Said that if we're able to roll it out, then we'll be able to resolve some of these issues. Another
but
way
if you
is
roll
to
that one out, like the minister said, and I started by making my opening comments that I think it's not entirely fair to say that the minister, sort of is run out of ideas and is saying Ghanaians should pray for rain, because I heard him give a very elaborate plan to solve the energy situation.
He didn't even say that Ghanaians should pray for rain.
No,
he prays.
It depends on where you heard him.
Oh.
because they have been two
So
platforms.
that has also been doctored.
They have in two forms. No, they have in two platforms where he had to refer to the question of prayer. One of them was very categorical that let us pray that there will be rains.
The version I heard
I'm saying that
he prays.
I'm saying that with the benefits of the strategies that he has, it is not fair to say that he is giving up and he's saying we should just pray.
Yeah.
But I'm saying again that what you're saying is you put
dams in various communities. Where,
all of that is to depend on the rains.
Yes.
Yes, and that's where we are.
No, I'm saying that you are asking of plans. So this is another plan that we can look at.
Okay.
Another one is to look at the solar, and we have an example of that in Navrongo, where government has that prayer has completed and is feeding into the national grid. So I would want to agree that probably the investments are not coming, but the plans are there, and the plans came out of the manifesto as you indicated. So it's not as if we have reneged on our promise to provide energy, but it has to do with the resources. And the fact that we don't have investors coming into that sector because it is a disincentive is the reason why we are where we are now. But we have the plans, and the plans, if rolled out, may ease some of these problems.
This thing, the experts, one of them says that the government should declare a crisis period for the next 3 years and focus on solving the problem. Do you subscribe to that? Maybe that will help.
If we say crisis, then you put lights off the whole country, we all go in darkness for 3 years or what?
No,
what does it mean by that?
Acknowledge that you have a problem and that it's gotten to a crisis level and you need this period of sustained investment and focus to be able to resolve it.
Do you need to declare by openly mounting a platform and say we have declared, or you can see the people who are in charge of the crisis echoing that we need to work and that we are working towards it? Doesn't it boil down to the same thing?
I see, Mr. Eko, to my understanding of that proposal is that it's to help us, give us a focus to tackle the problem and not deal with it in the piecemeal manner that we have sought to do, which continues to bring us back to where we are.
Thank you very much. You know, as Kweku pointed out, this is not the first time we are discussing energy.
And it is also to avoid the president giving us promises when he can't be sure that those promises can be made.
Exactly. My initial comment, I knew that my friend was just going to go that way. They have been in power for some time. All we wanted to know from them is what is their energy policy and what are they doing about it.
Where the first politics is coming from.
He didn't interrupt you. He didn't interrupt you.
I'm talking to Koku. That you should know where the first politics is coming from.
Okay.
So
you don't expect me to be dark.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Allow Mr. Okweti to make his point.
So I did the general, intro, and I knew exactly where he will land, and that's what he did. Now he's telling us about what the programs that they have. He's now trying to tell us about it. But if we have been discussing the energy program, I believe that many people would have put in something to help the government to get this thing running. We cannot all be in this crisis for this while, but instead of looking at the problem, they always go around to talk about, oh, this problem has been there, where MPP never added a kilowatt. So that is what they've been doing, and that is my worry. Bring your program on the table.
Why do you think that in the face of the facts that there was some amount of contribution, yet you hear what you just heard a while ago from Abraham Amali, but that you did not contribute even a single megawatt?
That has been my worry, because I'm saying that you are the government, people have voted for you, you stay there for a certain number of years, do something to solve a problem. If we have a crisis, like the gentleman is saying, can we now decide? You decided to go and have a forum on the economy because we realize there's some difficulty. That is all the gentleman is also saying. Why don't we declare, a crisis period for 3 years, tackle the energy program head on, bring everybody on board, and instead of playing politics with this every time from 2008, nothing has changed. We've gone on this runabout cycle, somebody saying we're going to end all the energy crisis very soon, that Ghanaians have very short memory. Before we say Jack, we've gone back to the same point. So that is not the way to go. We should take away.
In fact, the president didn't talk about very soon. He gave specific dates, and we kept missing the dates.
Exactly. So let's take away the politics. Let's look at your energy policies. Let's all discuss it. And if there is a way by which we can help to solve the problem, we'll do that, because it affects everybody. It cuts across. The judiciary cannot work if we don't have lights. The recording systems are all down. Lawyers cannot work in their offices. Factories are, being shut down. The workers are going home, and all that. It affects everybody. So it's not like an NDC problem. It's everybody's problem.
Right.
Let's talk about it. Stop the politics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayiko. Thank you very much. Okay, your views and comments are coming in still, and. If you could shift the focus from Maliba and bring your unbiased, unbiased, balanced perspective and contribution as to how it should be dealt with. We are dealing with discussants who are not technical people as far as this matter is concerned, but who know what exactly is going on and have tasted and can give some suggestions as to how to go about it. Abdul Malik.
Yeah. You see, it's so difficult. The point about the Bui Dam. By 2007, when the Chinese facility was procured and Parliament approved it, we were 41 years late in tackling that incident, which began in 1966 with that disruptive coup d'etat. There's no doubt about that. But Malabar's people had 19 years out of that 41 to have dealt with the issue. Now, if you understand the engineering processes that go into these facilities, from 2007 to 2009 January, it's so amazing for anybody to have expected 1 kilowatt of electricity to have been produced. It's an engineering process. And indeed, the time frame for completion was 2012. From 2007 to 2012, we delayed because of some financial and other problems. But the huge aspect of the facility had been achieved. So, and I've proved here that certain things had been done. Phase 1 had been completed. If you can't go to phase 2 or 3 without completing phase 1. Call it foundation or anything, but that shows a commitment to implementation of the process. Now, with the Zakem project, which now I'm not sure whether that's what they call the PON, something, TEMA, something, was 40% completed. It has also not produced a kilowatt of power, but that's what it is. And today we are told by our friends in the NDC that this project takes 4, 5, 6 years, and that's a fact. It's not sinking in to everybody that such projects take that long to implement, execute to completion. So really, there's no need for anybody to try and say that, look, I'm taking credit because I have produced a kilowatt of power from it. If it didn't begin, you could not have done anything about it. Then, of course, I'm holding a certain document. I'm told there's an updated version, which unfortunately I haven't accessed. I'm sure Ministry of Energy, if they are listening or watching, could be of help. But there was this Ministry of Energy document, National Energy Policy, July 2006, showing that, we have a vision relative to it. It's a question of whether we operationalize it or not and the difficulties. But if you go into it, it tells you about, let me just read a small portion. To meet national energy demand, Ghana's total energy supply is projected to grow by 35% by 2015. This is 2006. This requires us to increase our energy resource supply base and also expand our energy supply infrastructure significantly. The energy sector, however, faces significant issues and challenges which, if not timely addressed, will constrain our ability to deliver the requisite energy supply to support our socio-economic development agenda. It goes on to say that the major challenge among others confronting the sector is to secure investments estimated at about $5 billion required up to 2015 to build our energy supply infrastructure and secure adequate supplies of energy to meet demand. Then when you go further, it tells you the energy resources that we have in this country. And you are giving the biomass energy, solar energy, wind energy, You know, all these things, very beautiful. That's what I alluded to earlier. They're very beautiful document. Almost all the solutions are here. I think the deficit has been with implementation. Focused, consistent implementation. Sometimes changes in government also leads to problems. Take the classic example, is this gas, Ghana Gas. Ghana Gas, when the Mills administration assumed office, it committed itself to the original plan that had been put in place by the Kufuor administration. And I have an interview here between David Ampofo and then Minister of Energy, Dr. Otiaji. I'm sure you've been playing it. I've seen it on your TV screens before, where the government expressed its commitment to continuing with that plan because it had been put on a fast-track project by the previous administration. Somewhere along the line, because of the Chinese connection, the decision to change in terms of sources of funding and go to China, today we are about 4 or 5 years late. Because look, the original project was that you don't flare. We actually enacted a law in Parliament that will not flare gas. And in actual fact, production, oil production was to begin at the time when the gas plant was ready. That was the original plan.
Right.
We did not do anything about it. It's the same with Zakem. When the administration came, there were speculations that there was some foul deal relative to the Zakem project. If you recall, the former British diplomat, Craig Murray, raised some red flags, and then it became a huge issue, and that project was suspended. Eventually, I'm told the same contractor has been brought in to deal with VRA and other agencies, and that has also been delayed. So yes, apart from the investment deficit, our own attitudes in terms of leadership is part of the problem. Okay? Projects are put in place, fine documents are drafted, and we hardly do anything about it.
Okay, let me read Ganiu's message and get Dr. Akwete to finally speak on it, as it were, give us his very final thoughts on this issue. He says, if government inability to release funds to VRA is one of the principal causes of the erratic power supply, then we must squarely also blame TUC for compelling government to absorb a price it had not budgeted for.
Interesting.
If Ghanaians are not prepared to pay realistic tariffs but to centralize everything on the head of the president, then we will continue to be where we are. I'm not too sure Ghanaians are ready to hear any announcement that suggests an adjustment in the tariffs.
Well, if you don't adjust the tariff to meet operational and running costs, it might also get to a point that there will be no supplies. So we are caught between the rock and the hard place. And that is why I think fundamentally, we could refer to the energy policy. And the constant refrain has been, we have fine policies, but we are not implementing them. So we should ask ourselves why we're not implementing.
In fact, I've followed all the parties, in this country, particularly the NDC, the NPP, the PNC, and the CPP. And at KNUST, there's a forum where they are invited to deliver their energy plans. Myself and Matilda Asante moderated one of such. I followed subsequent ones.
You've been around for a long time.
They have fantastic policies about how to deal with the energy problem. And yet, here we are.
You know. So that's the problem we should probe. To be realistic, it tells you that there is an ownership problem. Okay, the commitment to the program. We still haven't moved it from the political turf and put it on the laps of the bureaucrats to handle it, irrespective of who comes. There must be. That is the essence of policy making. That's why sometimes you need to build consensus over things if you don't have the numbers. So there's a problem with that. Two, we leave most things to experts, and we do not subject the proposals of experts, to thorough public review and criticism. If you go to some countries in Europe, policies of this nature will be put out to the public for reviews, and they're searching for the best way of financing it. Is the financial proposals they made for implementation realistic enough? Were they sustainable? Yeah. Could there have been alternatives? Could we have done it in different ways, and so on? All these things are not in the public domain. We have a certain mode of policy making, that is not helping us deliver and impact, but we are stuck to it. And then at the end of the day, you don't implement. So if you are not going to implement, why do you do it? And so on. So for me, the important question is this. To what extent we should, I don't believe in this 3 years crisis that declare 3 years and let's work at it and so on. We have enough indicators.
He says one of the reasons we need that is to prevent the president from embarrassing himself or the government from embarrassing itself all the time by giving, you know, timelines and promising that it's over and it doesn't get over. It is bad enough for a president.
I think that's the problem of the bureaucracy that equips him with information. But in any case, let me tell you why. Why we are not solving any of our development problems on the sustained basis. Our political parties are not working hard enough on our development problems. Just look at how they engage in, it's all elections.
Right.
Okay, development is solved, problems are solved systematically. You need different ideas. You have to review, you have to test. You have to experiment a bit and so on. The gentlemen and ladies in the parties do not have time to go through these things systematically. Where are their research units? And how well equipped are they or resourced to do these things? It's not that they don't have the people, but at any given time, about 70% or more of their time is on candidates and elections. They simply do not pay attention to our development problems and how to solve them. They are not focused on our development challenges, because it will tell you that probably what we need to sustain supply based on what government aided in power and so on will be little things that links solutions together.
We are not even sure if the policies are being followed as a continuum, like the one Kuku has just brought to our attention.
Yes, of course, it's not.
For all you know, it's not being
So what makes you put it aside? And I think we should push our parties. In fact, to a large extent, they must take responsibility for the recurrence and the persistence of the crisis. Because in the current dispensation, it is only the parties that come to power. They take state power to solve our problems.
Right.
But just look at the parties. They don't have enough time for thinking through our development problems. So that is one. The second one is that VRA, I think we should look to the long term. But in the meantime, we should also survive. VRA says it needs recapitalization. It needs to rebuild infrastructure. The population has grown. Where things were 50 years ago and so on, some of the equipment and the load is too heavy and so on.
We have also on this platform enumerated how much billions have gone to VRA over the period.
Is it to replace? Is it to renew? Is it to replace old equipment and so on? Where is that plan?
Only
to buy
fuel.
But you said it. I mean, it's here. 50 million crude oil. But generation is always a problem. Whether you are relying on gas. I mean, Asogli couldn't operate for a long time because everything was based on gas coming from Nigeria, and when it didn't, and so on. But as a nation, we ought to think outside the box. What are the alternatives? What are the cheaper means we can use just in case we are not getting our supplies and so on? There is a need to think through holistically and in an integrated way how things, complementarities will be there to sustain our development and so on. And this solution of bring the oil, bring the thermal plant, it's not working. And I'm saying, let's challenge our parties that devote a little more time to thinking through development challenges, because you need finer things to solve problems on a sustained basis. And stop the big ideas all the time, because you're also not implementing. Probably we'll begin to find that solution sooner than we think.
Okay, and I understand that people are sending a lot of messages saying the solutions are already there.
They are there.
Like Abdul Malik said, it's just lack of implementation.
So let's
I am uncomfortable when you say the president embarrasses himself every now and then.
I'm quoting an expert who says that is one thing we ought to avoid. So let's declare a period and see to solve it.
Yeah, but
is it not embarrassing?
No. The president relies.
Maybe you put it to me. I don't. You see, I think that we cannot declare crisis because the president gave a date that was not fulfilled. That, you must look at
because
institutions.
The president relies on information from experts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, if the experts come to tell him that this is how far we have gone, then the president who accounts to us,
he's the one carrying the message.
Yeah, so comes and tells us that don't say that the president embarrasses himself. I think that that is a harsh word to use. No, I do not think that that is an embarrassment. I think that there are some of the issues that the president cannot foresee. For instance, after the repair of the gas pipeline, that was the main problem. Now, when the gas started flowing, the president was not a magician to know that the Nigerians were going to cut down on their gas supply for you to say that he shouldn't then announce. So let's look at the circumstances. Yeah, you can say that he should avoid it, but I disagree strongly that he embarrasses himself. I will not be part of that.
I hear you, but I thought that people already know that. People already know that the president is not an energy expert, so he depends on his people.
The important thing is, if bureaucrats or technocrats give wrong information to policymakers, what happens to them?
Exactly.
So you may talk about that, and you may say that that person should be dealt with. We are waking up. We are waking up to news of people at the helm of affairs resigning in America, not because they have done anything particularly wrong, so to speak, but because they have supervised that particular process. What did you have to say?
You know, let me make the point that energy is never sufficient. You always need to work on energy, and I think that most governments are aware. My worry is this: if you are giving the state apparatus the power to rule, make sure that you continue with the energy policies so that we can get our energy all the time.
Right.
Stop the blame game of going back and telling everybody that this thing started long ago. That is why you are there, because people felt that those who were in power were not able to solve it. They changed and put you there. So stop the blame game and let's talk about energy.
Thank you very much. Larry says, please ask for me the role of buoy in the energy equation of Ghana. It appears it has become a standby generator, if not a white elephant, after all the billions pumped into that project. And that's an interesting bit also, because we understand that as we speak, buoy is actually like he describes it to be. And this one from Dahamani Abdul Karim says, Samson, believe me, even after having the rains we are asking for, we still are going to face the unprecedented energy challenges. Let's pray for Ghana. Okay, so you still believe in prayer, much more emphasis on that. Michael Jojoji says, Samson, it's likely that fuel prices will be increased tomorrow. No light, no water, no money, oh Ghana, save us. I see. But where are you getting that your information from, that fuel prices are likely to go up tomorrow? And then Francis Dafo, is it Dafo, says that listen to Dr. Akwete and compare his submissions to those of Lawyer Amaraba. Please come on. Our debates as a nation must be enriched by expert opinions, not one-sided propaganda. Thank you very much for your messages. Alex Edu-Mensah says, electricity crisis is as a result of bad governments that we have had ever since. But, okay, let's end it there. Let's not pick any particular, president and tag them with it. Thank you very much.